Hi, my name's Laura, and I'm going to share with you my love of biscuits. Some years ago, I decided to get serious about my cooking, and one of my sources, a book from America's Test Kitchen, said that you should take a small number of dishes, perhaps 10, not more than 20, prioritize the dishes that you really want to do well, and then practice them over and over for a limited time. Don't try to practice too many things at once. Just focus on what really matters to you until you get it right, and then you can move on and add more to the list. In my case, at the very top of my list was Southern-style biscuits. I grew up in Alabama, and when I was a little girl, I used to sit on the countertop and watch my grandmother make biscuits. She had made biscuits for my hot breakfast and biscuits for my grandfather every morning during the first 10 or 20 years of their marriage. She patted them out by hand, and being a frugal woman, she had a little tin can from which she had cut out the top and bottom to use as a biscuit cutter. I also used to spend summers during my childhood with an aunt and uncle who had a chicken farm, and my Aunt Sally, would make biscuits every morning, and she would split them open, slather them with butter, and then I would drizzle on honey. Later in my life, as a college student, when my parents had divorced and my dad remarried, his wife, Kitty, who was from the Atlanta, Georgia area, also made biscuits. Her biscuits were a little different from my grandmother's or my aunt's. They were really big, light and fluffy, and my dad always called them Cathead Biscuits, and he was in love with Kitty's Cathead Biscuits. So when I got serious about making biscuits, I had a talk with my younger brother, and we agreed that we really had the strongest memories for Kitty's Cathead Biscuits. So that was the type of biscuit I set out to make. And I tried biscuit recipes from this cookbook and that cookbook, and none of them were really close to the perfect biscuit of my memory that Kitty used to make while I was a college student. And then I stumbled across a recipe in a cookbook by Rose Levy Berenbaum, her Pie and Pastry Bible, called Touch of Grace Biscuits. And in the foreword to that recipe, Rose explained that she had adapted this recipe from one by a woman named Shirley Corher, pardon my mispronunciation, who was from Atlanta, Georgia. And when I read the description of the biscuit, and taking into account that the original author was from Atlanta, Georgia, I knew I was onto something. This had to be Kitty's Cathead Biscuit. I gave the recipe a try. It was definitely a challenge. The dough for the Touch of Grace biscuits has a high rate of hydration, so it's extremely soft. It's much too soft a dough to pat out and cut biscuits out of or anything like that. And it took several tries before I produced biscuits using that recipe that I was happy with, that I felt I was proud to serve at the table. But I stuck with it, and my conclusion was these were definitely Kitty's Cathead Biscuits. When I passed this news on to my brother, he said, well, I want to learn to make biscuits from you. And eventually, we set up what we called Biscuit Academy. And we agreed that we would get together 3 weekends in a 2-month period, and he would make Cathead biscuits while I supervised. The first 2 times I went to his house. He did it in his own kitchen with the same tools and supplies that I use in my kitchen. But the ultimate test was that the 3rd time he had to come to my house to make biscuits in someone else's kitchen. He graduated with flying colors, and so now there are 2 of us in the family who know how to make Cathead biscuits. Finally, I would like to share my international experience serving Cathead biscuits. When I went to visit my daughter in Barcelona a couple of summers ago, she told me that she wanted me to make Cathead biscuits for her friends. We were spending the weekend at a village outside of the city, And to say that the kitchen was different than any I was used to is an understatement. The house hadn't been lived in full time for decades. It did have an oven which barely worked, but it worked. I didn't have all the usual tools. I didn't have my usual self-rising flour, but I did the best I could. I did find flour. I found baking powder. I used butter instead of shortening, and so on. I made biscuits. I mixed it in a pot. There were no mixing bowls, so I mixed the dough in a pot and made the biscuits. And when we sat down to have breakfast, myself, my daughter, and all her friends together, the biscuits were a great hit, and I could really feel the spirits of my grandmother, my Aunt Sally, and my wonderful stepmother Kitty, all there, all sharing in the experience and sending their love. Thank you.